Welcome to The Lumber Word, where industry veterans Matt Beamer, Greg Riley, and Ashley Buckholt dissect the world of commodity lumber each week. We bring you up-to-date insights on supply, demand, and market trends, sharing our trading expertise to benefit everyone in the supply chain. Join us for informative and entertaining discussions that guarantee to make you wiser about all things lumber.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of The Lumber Word, episode number 99. Matt Beamer, Hampton Lumber Sales, and Charles De La Torre from Industrial Forest Products going to be doing it with us today. And Greg is on his, I told Charles, on the plane down to NOLA right now. We're going to roll with this and chat about it. And tomorrow when I listen to this, I'll probably be riding in a pickup truck out in the middle of Iowa with my buddy Farmer Dave to do some bird hunting.
You're going
yeah, I'm gonna go for the first time tomorrow.
Thanks for the invite, Ash. Appreciate that.
Well, it's a long season. I know we're gonna work on that. This isn't the only time I go. Yet? No, it'll be warm. It'll actually be warm. Okay. I think. So introduction, good week so far.
I mean, everything y'all trade in is on fire, man. Boards up $60 in 7 days.
It's crazy. It's funny. We were going to talk about that. You know, I think we've said this in a few. Most people didn't think we were going to move on a lot of products until late next year, right? And that never happens the way everybody wants it to. So now all of a sudden you're seeing items kind of moving. I'm starting to see people wanting forward numbers for January, February, March. I haven't seen that in a while. People are wanting to buy trucks, but have me wait to ship them into the first of the year. You know, all kinds of interesting stuff that you see when a market is, you know, we made it through seasonal weakness and traded sideways. As Riley always says, that's usually bullish. And well, let's go through real quick. Charles, Southern Pine. I mean, when I look at print and all this kind of stuff, like you're right, you hit it on the head. All the other markets are exciting. What's going on with pine right now?
The ostrich trade has turned its ugly head again. Everybody got excited and nothing 12 and longer you could find, and 16s were astronomically expensive. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, 10 days later, you know, we're trading at massive discounts. And when I say massive discounts, I mean, 10 to 12, 15% in 4 to 5 business days, which is quite frankly mind-blowing. But once again, in our business, being in truck markets, it's a lot more sensitive than what y'all dealing with reloads and et cetera, right? Supply chain is pretty much instant.
Well, no doubt. It's different.
I always like to say 7-year-old pine to make a man out of you to figure out where you're, if you're really convicted in your decisions. But I mean, there's some bright spots. 6-inch still strong. I mean, 6 inches is a good dimension, especially when you look at, comparing species from one another, whether it's in the PNW or it's Eastern Canada. I mean, there's huge price discrepancy, and we're seeing a lot of people take advantage of that through the end of the year in Q1. But even then, there's that lull in July and August, just in the market as a whole, put a lot of people in a precarious situation. And when I think about it, the number one scenario I think about is Matty B bringing up his buddy that sold cars for December shipment and didn't think anything of it, like hundreds of cars of spruce and Doug fir. And I think every time we talk, he brings it up. And, whoever that may be is probably paying the piper right now, which I can't imagine how hard that hurts.
What about OSB? I mean, first of all, Southern Pine, is that across the board on all the widths and grades right now?
I mean, 12 inch is just strong in general. I mean, there's a lot of mills that produce 8 and more narrow, right? Not every mill has a diverse product mix, and a lot of that has to do with how they're set up, chicken saw, etc., and their primary breakdown. But I mean, 12 inch is still pretty good. 10 inch is steady. 8 inch is 8 inch, and 6 inches is steady as she goes. I think the biggest thing is the big bull run up on 4 inch as fast as it did in 10 to 12 days, and then it kind of stabilized. And one of the stories that we had internally is try to get clean and flush by early January, and I mean we've done a really good job, but it's still the true story is yet to be told.
OSB, what's a little? I saw a little print up yesterday on that. I mean,
steady takeaway.
Steady takeaway. kind of marching right along? Is it close to what the print prices are, or is it trading a premium right now?
There's a premium.
Okay.
Just know where you're at and what the item is.
Gotcha. And so OSB, good. Southern Pine, not so bueno.
Well, it's not that it's bad, right? It's just, we escalated very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And, those supply chains, once again, being next day, have a tendency to settle down a lot faster than something that y'all deal in. Right?
Well, we looked at some 4-inch cars up into the Northeast yesterday, just pricing them out. Still $100 over that low trade price, 100 plus, right, on the 4-inch. So it's still up there, but I don't think you're going to see that market move back to where that low was put in this year. Personally, what do you think of that?
No, I think you're exactly right. I mean, we got higher lows and higher highs. I mean, we've seen that since July, right? I mean, we've had 2 pullbacks since, an escalation, then a stall, then a pullback, then an escalation. I mean, it lends itself to creating more stable floors at higher numbers, which gives mills an opportunity to really right size everything that they're doing and create some sort of order file.
How's your takeaway? How's your takeaway? Your business then this week?
It's fluid, right? I mean, the big thing for us is having forward book and having an order file. If you have order file, I think we've discussed this. If you have order file, you have price stability. If you don't have order file, you got wood to sell, and you're in a situation where you may or may not do things that you necessarily want to do, but kind of have to do.
Matt, how about your market? Pacific Northwest, Western Canada, that type of thing. What in the Texas market? What are you seeing?
I had a really good day yesterday. Sold a bunch of stuff in both rail and truck. So kind of like when I got home, my wife asked, how'd the day go? I said, actually, I was really busy. I sold a whole bunch of trucks and a whole bunch of cars, and all kind of happened in the middle and late in the day. It was interesting. I was even getting orders at 5 o'clock West Coast time, which 7 o'clock your time, 8 o'clock Charles's time, and setting new high prices too. So there's some things that I sold on trucks yesterday that are the highest prices of the year so far in the stuff that I trade. And so, and then I've got a ready pool of buyers on my email that want to buy more 2x4 16s, more 2x6 16s, Doug for him for spruce, you name it. They just need more of it. So, it leads me to the idea that we're going to reach a point where the customers are going to have to change their buying habits. And they are. I mean, sorry, you're going to have to go back to buying randoms, heavy something, right? You can't, the days of just buying straight 16s and heavy all 16s and 16s and 16s. I think that's coming to an end as we go into 2025. And I think customers are going to have to go back to more of a collaborative type of buying strategy, where if they want to get fulfilled on the Western species that they want to buy, they're going to have to settle on tally. And it's not really a settling on price thing, because we all know what the prices are. There's no real problem with price discovery right now. You can buy it. I mean, we have lumber for sale. It just costs more. But the mills are definitely pushing back on tallies now. And I think that that's going to be embedded in the culture here for at least 60 to 90 more days. So, be forewarned. Now, if you are a truck seller, then I think that leads, that's going to lead you to better margins on the straights that you have that are the prime lengths that people want. But it's going to become on the car side, it's just going to become more of a traditional, hey, we make it random, we're selling at random. There you go.
What kind of order file you guys building out on the
We're already into December on everything. There's a few cars that pop up for Thanksgiving or sooner, which that would have probably shipped late anyhow, just because the weather out here is terrible. It's going to rain and snow for the next 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
And, it is Christmas tree season, so that kinks up trucking quite a bit on the West Coast. We never really talked about this much, in Chicago, but in Oregon, this is the Christmas tree capital of the world. And so all these trucks are going up and down the West Coast and over east. And that takes away some capacity for all the mills in Oregon, Washington that produce lumber that want to ship it to those same places. They're competing now for trucking.
Matt, I got an interesting question for you, because we know Doug fir has kind of, it's been expensive all year round compared to kind of what we do every day. Are
Right.
you theoretically, I mean, and I don't know if you see it or not, but are you seeing a lot of competition with guys open to species swapping in pine in Texas?
No, not at all. A couple of truss plants that have switched over to yellow pine. And there's 1 yard or two that I'm aware of that switched over to yellow pine on 2 before number 3. But no, my business in Texas, if people want Doug fir, that's what they buy. They want Doug fir for a reason. There's a typically in the Western United States, people that are buying Doug fir either do it for historical reasons because that's what they've always bought and they just prefer it. That would be the whole West Coast. Basically, all of Oregon, Washington, California is a predominantly Doug fir market, has been forever. But places like Oklahoma, Texas, Missouri, Chicago, places where they want Doug fir on purpose, it's usually because of a building code requirement. And they also do prefer to use Doug fir if they can get it over yellow pine because it's easier to work, takes a nail better. It's a little more stable product than yellow pine is, and so it's considered the king of softwood species.
4-inch, I would agree with you
And,
110% as far as goes.
the
I don't know
market
about
is
6.
very people in Texas buy a lot of 2x6 yellow pine. I mean, every
A
yard I've
lot.
ever been through's got a big stack of 2x6 yellow pine laying around, and hardly any of them buy 2x4 yellow pine.
No,
But
I
those
mean
same yards
that's
buy
where
2x12 Doug fir, and they buy Doug
yeah.
fir long lengths, right? Don't ask me
Well, that's
why,
what,
and they buy
and I
Doug
think
fir
that,
stud.
and I think that's it. That's the big value that y'all have is those extra long lengths that quite frankly we don't produce a lot of. I mean, there's definitely a value, right? I'm just trying to fact find for selfish reasons and just as a market as a whole, right? Because I mean, we've had some conversations and I've led some calls with some guys, whether it's in heavy into the Northeast and swapping with spruce over to pine just because the supply chain is a little bit easier to manage. They get a little bit more accurate at timelines, et cetera. Or it's a price thing. I mean, I think, if we look at Western species compared to Southern Yellow Pine, I think you can buy 2 trucks of 2x6 16 number 2 Southern Yellow Pine for 1 truck of spruce.
Yeah, I mean, spruce is trading seven.
Honestly,
yeah,
Which is mind blowing. It's mind blowing.
Yeah. And I believe that before I retire in this business, I will trade some yellow pine. And I'm sure Ashley will too. I know a few guys. I've actually got some pretty good mill relationships too that happen to have some yellow pine assets. But I've never stocked yellow pine. I've never actively gone out to trade yellow pine. But that day will come, I'm sure. There's going to be enough species disruption here. If you look at the big picture, let's say we're at 1.4 million housing starts, right? Let's step back away from species and let's just look at the nation and the demand for housing that we have. That's a continual underfulfilled. Both campaigns talked about building more houses. They had different ideas of how to do it, but pretty much everybody agrees that we are underbuilt in this country for the population growth that we've experienced, right? And for the aging of our inventory. So you're going to have at least 1.4 million housing starts per year, and that's below my lifetime average. I think, Ashley, in our career, 30 years now, it's been about 1.5 on average historically.
that's right.
So we're still
That's
not
right.
even at the long-term historical average at 1.4. What if it goes up to 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 here with the Trump bump? There's definitely momentum in markets right now, and you got guys like Charles Payne talking about animal spirits. Hey, dude, that's real. I mean, people are optimistic all of a sudden, and what if they start building more homes based on that? Now, the flip side of that is interest rates are popped up, 10 years up. That might put the brakes on some housing things, but let's just assume that we're going to be at 1.4 million to 1.5 million for the next 4 to 5 years. And we keep losing production in Canada. You aren't building new capacity in the Western United States. There's no new inland mills popping up. The Euros don't seem super interested in coming here unless it starts with a 6 or a 7. And so there's just going to be fewer options for lumber companies and what they can buy and stock. And that will cause species swapping. It will.
Yeah.
It'll just happen organically over time. But that's why I submit that someday I will probably trade some yellow pine before I'm retired. I got maybe 10 years left here.
It's interesting, Matt. And this conversation has been going around probably a lot more in the last year as people, and heck, when Charles Greg and I were up watching that conference up in Canada, and you actually see the charts they throw up there. You're like, damn, there's not going to be any more lumber really produced in Canada, more so than it's being produced now. Actually, there's going to be probably less, especially with BC. It'll level out, but it'll be significantly less. Pacific Northwest, Matt, you're tight on that. You're tied into that, and you're right. There's probably not going to be a lot more production there. We're probably peaking there, but then you look to the south, and you're like, hey, look at. You can see the volume. You can see the cost of production. We're all going to have to figure out, as a seller, how to probably start selling pine, pricing it. And as a buyer, the one thing I've always seen, especially if you're talking about contracts, I'm not going to, if you're a buyer, whether multifamily, retail, however you want to look at it, if you don't build the optionality in for multi-species into a quote going forward, you're really missing out. I mean, if you don't have optionality, like Charles said, you're losing $300, $1,000 on some 2x6 items right now. And I can make the argument in most cases, you can substitute the product.
So Charles,
Just
I have a question.
My opinion.
Actually, that's good observation. And, it goes along with the age-old wise saying is that as a buyer, it doesn't matter what you buy, but if you're a buyer, you want to have as many options as possible. And if you're a seller, you want to have as many options as possible. Correct. So, Charles, I have a question for you.
Yep.
What can the yellow pine producers do? Well, let me step back one step here. Why do so many people accept 2x6 yellow pine and stock it, and so few people do the same with 2x4, number 2?
Well, it's a stability issue. I mean, 6-inch material, when it's dressed and dried, I mean, it's a lot more stable. It doesn't check, it doesn't crack, it doesn't bend and bow the way 4-inch does. I mean, it's just,
What's the biggest problem with if I've got a car, a 2x4 yellow pine number 2 sitting in my yard in Austin, Texas, and it's not undercover, let's just say in a T-shed or something. A, is it wrapped? And B, what's the life expectancy of that lumber before it starts checking, curling, splitting, whatever these problems are that you're talking about?
4-inch, I would say, I don't know exactly what the climate is in Austin, but I mean, I can keep 4-inch in a 2-sided lumber shed for 60, 90 days. I think it's a fear of the unknown. I think it's lack of experience, right? But I mean, you've also got to think too, you can stick Doug fir with no cover in a yard, and it doesn't do that in 4-inch, right? Whereas it's a little bit more of a managing aspect, managing your first in, first out, et cetera, to make sure your lumber doesn't age. It's just an extra step, honestly.
Hey, I've kept 8-inch, 10-inch, and 12-inch for 6 to 12 months before, and sold it. And right now, I'll bring 4-inch and 6-inch up into the Midwest and paper wrapped, and I'll have them put it inside. And it's November right now. I can be selling that
if you keep it inside,
March, April, May next year. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I saw some yellow pine inside storage in Texas in September when I was down there. And I mean, it looks fine if you keep it inside, but that's expensive, right? So not a lot of people want to do that. It just adds cost. But I mean, if you're saving $100, $200, $1,000, I think you probably justify that cost. But I've always wondered why more people don't use yellow pine, just out of curiosity. Like and I'm a Western guy, so I'm not in the market. I'm not in the culture, Charles, and you firmly are. And so, as much as I know about Doug fir and hem fir and spruce, that's also the lack of what I know about yellow pine, and I never quite understood why more people haven't switched. Honestly, to tell you the truth.
I can give you my 30,000 foot view into human nature why it doesn't happen.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Matt. I think you answered your own question a minute ago, right? You said historically they've just done it this way. They don't have to worry about managing first in, first out. If you stick Doug fir outside, it sits there for 3 or 4 months. You don't have to manage it the way you do Southern yellow pine. And I think that's a big key to it, right? And then you've also got a scenario to where, it complicates things, because then you have to re-educate everybody else in the supply chain behind that yard as to why you should or could or might want to choose a Southern yellow pine product over a spruce or a Doug fir or a hem fir. So, I mean, there's a couple different variables that you got to look at when it comes to just human nature, and that's the hardest thing to crack. I mean, prime example, 2 6/16s in the Florida ash. What are you selling 2 6/16 spruce in the Florida at delivered?
750,
750, 775 all day long.
Yep.
Right. I can deliver 2 6/16 number 2 into Central Florida for sub 390.
I look at why doesn't it happen? And like,
I mean, it's crazy.
So here's the crazy thing is I don't want. Here's why it does. I know it's going to happen faster than we think. Selfishly, I don't want to because I know how to trade other items. I'll learn to trade Southern Pine. I have traded it before. People are so entrenched into jobs at big companies. This is the spruce buyer. This is the Southern Pine buyer. This is how everything's set up. And we go all the way out to our contractors and they only use this. You know what? What's going to happen is people are just going to start buying pine and shipping it to the job site because and it's just going to happen. There's nothing we can do about it. That's just the way it's going to work. Right. And we're going to have to learn to acclimate to it. I mean, Charles, I'm a little jealous. You're sitting there on the, you're sitting there in the fiber basket of the world right now for timber. And,
Yep.
And
we keep shutting paper plants down.
And that's where everything's shifting. So, hey, one thing I wanted to say is as the podcast grows, we're going to grow with our new sponsors. So we're about halfway through the podcast. I'm going to introduce our first sponsor, Random Lengths Fast Market, and they're going to have a quick talk on some of their products coming up, and then we'll be back.
Hey there. This is Dustin Jalbert from the Fast Markets Analytics team. My colleagues at Random Lengths and I are huge fans of the lumber word, so we're thrilled to be a sponsor of this episode. We wanted to tell you about something we've developed called the Fast Markets Repair and Remodeling Index. R&R activity in the U.S. accounts for over 40% of domestic lumber demand. But up until the launch of our index, it's been really difficult to understand what's going on in this opaque market. Our new Repair and Remodeling Index combines insights from data tracking the professional and do-it-yourself segments to create an intuitive, easy-to-understand index that captures the volume of R&R activity on a monthly basis. Alternate indicators for R&R track dollar spending, which has been hugely problematic given the massive inflation we've seen in the building material space in recent years. So it's critically important to parse out the inflation component of the story to understand the underlying volume of activity in home improvement. This is one of a number of enhancements Fast Markets has invested in to further improve our coverage in our Random Lengths and analytics services. For more information on the R&R Index or any other questions about our wood products commentaries, head to fastmarkets.com/RR Index to find out more. That's fastmarkets.com/RR Index to get more information.
All right, we're back. What I wanted to talk about too is the Eastern market and the Euro market. So the Eastern market was pretty good this week. One thing I've noticed is the one item that Greg and I always look at, like 2x4, 104 and 5/8, kind of sits there. All of a sudden in the last week took off, right? And basically that's moving now. People, as of this morning, or Wednesday morning, people are looking at buying 20, 30 trucks for first quarter, all that. We're starting to see that, right? Another thing that I saw this week on spruce and the reloads, especially 16s, Matt, 416s, I could have sold, and this is nothing against wholesalers, love them and all that. I could have sold wholesalers our mill and our wood on the ground at our reloads at a lot higher price than end users were buying this week, right? And I think that's just because some people now are just trying to get long fiber at different places. So that tells me that the market is kind of running. I don't know what inning we're in here, but it's still got some oomph in it. So Eastern Canada, like everything has been tight to buy this week. Euro continues to stay strong. I mean, we just talked about, Charles, what we're selling 2x6s at. I heard people are selling 2x6s in the 700s in the mid 700s for January and February already. that'll really play on the European people who were up at the conference in Vancouver trying to decide whether they want to ship over here right now. Well, you're making a lot of money shipping it now, or decent money on 2x6. I'm sure that'll start rolling in. And I've heard prices of some of the European people selling at under the price on 6-inch, moving it off for 2 or 3 months out, right? So the other interesting thing is that vessel that dropped in the Cape this week, that thing had 35 million board feet on it. That's a lot of trucks and lumber. And
Is that a lot?
that's at one location. That's a lot. So
in one,
yeah. So what I'm saying,
in one reload, yeah.
one reload.
got-
So what I'm saying is, at this price, expect volume to start coming over, right?
So basically, this is a progressive possible warning for the end of the year if you've got that much wood coming
Well,
over.
I mean, if you're European, you see a
That's about
7 handle
1,200
on
trucks. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think somebody said 1,500. So
Ooh.
that's a lot. That's a lot. So that's one of the interesting things I'm saying. Like I said, and we're also seeing a lot of forward business. I hadn't seen that in a while. And I could tell you what we see at our mill level, more people that weren't interested. Everybody wants a contract now for 2025. But it makes sense. High-end spruce lumber, I think that's one of the reasons why that spread is crazy so wide to spruce to southern pine right now. And it tells me southern pine is more representative of a market. I mean, Charles, maybe you could fill in, that's more fairly in supply and demand, that's just going through seasonally down right now, and maybe it's going to rally again Q1. It's got enough ample production out there where spruce and U.S. species, that for people that want it, probably not enough out there, or they're all trying to head out the same door at the same time and buy, right?
I would say you're probably right on the demand for your Wayne-free premium stuff as far as spruce goes. I think you've been ringing that bell for months though. You've got something there, but I mean, if you've got 1,500 trucks of a very like kind product in one place, in one port, in one East Coast port, what does Baltimore look like? Do we know what that looks like?
I don't know. I only keep kind of an eye on the Cape, but that's one of the biggest war wagons I've seen on load there for a while. And usually I think they drop it off at different locations. This one just hit there and unloaded everything, right? So my question is there enough?
How much of that do you project to be sold already? That would be my first question.
I have to think 80% of it's sold already. That's my guess, because it's just too expensive to keep wood on the port, either sold through spot transactions or people that had a contract where it comes in and goes right out, right? I know 80% of ours was sold when it hit, and we're already shipping trucks. It unloaded, we cleared yesterday, and we've got probably 30 or 40 trucks already out today, right? Just too expensive to keep wood on the ground at ports to spec on it, right? Or people are getting it off site somewhere, but most of that comes in and it dissipates pretty quickly. Although there is a number
demand
of
is satisfied for a period of time. And
Yeah,
once that
but I
wood
mean, they're
arrives
already-
at people's yards, they don't need to call you tomorrow and go, "Hey, I need some fill-in trucks," because they just got all their fill-in trucks. So it's you're gonna, like, we like to talk about what inning we're in. Last week I said we were in the 4th or 5th inning. I believe we are advancing into like the 7th inning now. There will be a pause between now and the end of the year. Sometimes you even get a pullback in November, December. And I mean, I imagine if we get something like that because of time of year, holidays, weather, whatever it is, it won't last very long this year. You know, the secret's out. Like, look, we've been talking about this since July, right? And we front run the whole fall seasonal weakness. We didn't even have seasonal weakness this year because now everybody's prepared for the first half of next year thinking it's going to go ballistic. And so the idea that people are going to say after this election change and the business climate that we're feeling all of a sudden 5 days later, there's a lot of optimism in the world right now, and not just the United States, worldwide. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens here, pullbacks are going to be short and sudden, and then explosions are going to be short and sudden right after that too. So I just think hold on for the ride here. It's going to be interesting. And do I think it's going to 800, 900? I don't. I think demand will be satisfied and species will be switched. Alternatives will be found. Just transportation will be okay. But I do think we could go up another $100 from here. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me to be on February 15th to be at 700 Chicago on 2 before spruce. Would I be shocked out of my mind? Nope, not at all.
Yeah.
So, but it could be 550 again, right? I mean, so there's some risk now.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my thing set up at Vancouver, 700 plus next year at some point.
Goes what you said. Greg says 700. You said 800.
Yeah, I think I took the
Chicago.
over on him. You brought up a good point, Matt, and like not to get political or anything, but after that election was over, we had a lot of buying the next day in our office. A lot of people were buying trucks and lumber, and I think it would have been whoever won, but there certainly seems to be a lot more optimism out there right now. I think a relief that everything's over with, and it just seems like a good business environment going forward. And some of the feeling that I'm getting is people really feel good about moving forward here, and especially on the building side of things. What are you both seeing on that?
I just feel it. I listen to it on the radio. I hear it. I see it on TV. I hear it on the office. There's just a change, and it's like a weight has been lifted, and you're seeing stories about Vivek Ramaswamy coming in Department of Government Efficiency. They're going to waste and wasteful programs, and they're going to reduce regulation on businesses, and there's going to be a bunch of America pro trade type stuff going on. You look at the stock market rally like 1,200 points the day after the election, which I think what people wanted was certainty, and they got certainty. There's no question who got elected, right? It's not going to drag out in the courts for 2 months. There's not, millions of dollars worth of lawyers arguing on TV for 60 days like in 2000.
Hey, but did anybody get 81 million votes?
What's that?
Yeah.
We lost about 10 or 15 million from 2020.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that happened.
We're not supposed to talk about that.
That's what you call statistics.
Exactly.
Okay. Numbers never lie. Numbers never lie.
But I mean, there's definitely optimism in the air, right? And business wise, if you watch, CNBC or Bloomberg or Fox Business News, it just seems like people are in a smiley face, good mood. Everybody's kind of optimistic about 2025, and that bodes well for us too, right? The one thing I would be careful of, and I'll probably just beat this to a dead pulp, but interest rates, that does worry me a little bit. So, either the country gets used to 7% mortgages, or we somehow figure out how to ratchet that mortgage rate down to 6%. And that point might not seem like much. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say that was going to be my next talking point, honestly, because it's interesting that you started your statement off with "I feel it," right? Because in lumber trading we talk about emotions and how you don't make decisions based on emotion. But what has changed, and the viability and the sheer volume of positivity that has come back, right, with that certainty, it's hard to avoid that. I agree with you 110%. I just found it entertaining because we always say don't make decisions based on emotion. And as an industry, we are emotionally invested in what just happened. And it's theoretically determining, 12, 18 to 24 month decisions based on some of these things progressing and actually rolling out. So I would agree with you. I think it's a pro-business scenario. I think a lot of jobs that were tabled based on various reasons, right? Interest rates are obviously one of them, but just as a total, various reasons, they're going to come back. I mean, I read an article yesterday about rents in Texas actually being up almost 1.5% to 2% over a 60-day period. They haven't seen rent growth in 18 months, I think, or 16 months is what I
Yep.
read somewhere. So that's going to be another big piece that kind of plays into it, especially if you get agency money back to, 4 3/4 points or 5% versus 5.5 to 6 1/4, right? I mean, that's a big deal when you're deploying 30, 40, $50 million on a project. So, there's a lot of things that are going to play into it. I just think it's going to be real interesting to see the timing of it all and when the rubber meets the road, right?
Absolutely.
Good point.
The best economists in the world understand that emotion drives markets, right?
Oh, it does.
And
Fear and greed, man. It makes the world go round.
That's how we got tulips up to, record high prices in Amsterdam back in the, 1500s or whenever that was. But, Bitcoin's at what, 97,000 or something today. It's like, yeah, you could have bought it 3 months ago for 45 or something. It's like, look, economics is partly based on emotion and partly based on reality, right? And the emotional component of business but the feeling of confidence going forward is why you go out and buy a house. Take it down to the cellular level. House.
I'm not
buying a house? Who's renting an apartment?
Right?
Somebody that's absolutely excited about the future and thinks they're going to have a decent paying job and that they can afford it. They're going to throw down the down payment, buy that house. They're going to buy that lot and throw a custom home on it or a double wide. It doesn't matter, but you need confidence in the future. When you have confidence in the future, you get rallies. It doesn't matter if it's tulips or lumber. It's just human beings are like lemmings. We follow our gut instincts and we read the tea leaves and we make economic decisions based on our confidence in the future, which is tied to the leadership. So there you go. My lesson for the day,
funny.
kiddies.
So we were just talking. I poked my head in Greg's office the other day. I'm like, remember those cars that we bought a few months ago that we thought we were going to just get crushed on, and we were scared. We talked about it for a week and a half. And why did we do that? We made good money on those, right? After we brought them in and unloaded them, did that a couple times. And all of a sudden, the reason the conversation came up was, I'm like, oh man, I just bought those cars the other day and said, these are a no-brainer. Like that, those are the ones you get hurt on, right?
But they were a no-brainer. You told me about those cars.
No, I'm talking about yes, those were, but I'm getting the point now, right? Like, we're not going to buy anything. Both bought some stuff today and yesterday. It's like now it's just it's piling on at this point, right? It's piling on.
Sport buying, Ashley.
That's why you're in the seventh or eighth inning, right? Because when I do that, my history has been, and I have less of a fear. Those are the ones that the hubris can get you a little bit after that one.
Those last dozen or half a dozen always sting the worst.
It's that last one that always hurts you, right?
Yeah.
It's the 3 a.m. It's the 3 a.m.
Hey, here's the
last guy at the bar buy.
The age old saying is, if you can buy for less than what your last sale was, then you can. That's called a continuation trade. You can do that kind of stuff. But if you're paying a premium to buy back in over what your last sale was, danger ahead. Always be careful.
Make sure you're always, like my dad said at the lumberyard when I was a kid, he goes, well, make sure you're always selling for more than you're buying for. That's the first lesson, right? And
it's literally, it's lumber 101, but it's true.
Yeah. Well, let's
although if you use that half of 2022, that didn't work out too well for you.
That's right.
That would have cost you a little bit of money in wasted time. What do you mean you own two before
jump into the Mary
number 3 at 1,200 delivered? You sold it.
What do you think about the Mary Date and Dump segment, boys?
All right, let's
go. You go first.
Who wants to start? Start.
Southern Yellow Pine substitution in Texas. I think it's going to be more widely adopted moving forward than it has been in the past, due to some educational hurdles that have to get jumped through. That's number one. And that's just the West in general, honestly. I think Florida's done a good job. I think the East Coast has done a good job. And I would also throw, the more northern East Coast landscape into that, even with their panelized, framing production, for the very simple fact that, it's just a cheaper product. Date, I would say I mean, anything we produce, I mean, we're always in the market, whether it's commodity or custom trim. So I mean, we do it day in and day out, and we have market based pricing, so it's kind of fluid. Dump is going to be 2 before number 2 Southern Yellow Pine, all links.
All right, now I got to change
Interesting.
And
mine.
if
All right,
anybody, and
here's
if
what I'm-
anybody wants any 2 to 6 spruce delivered in January at $800 in Florida, I'll sell it to you.
Yeah, here's mine. I'm going to buy everything that Charles is selling. I want to buy all of his
That's perfect.
2 before Yellow Pine.
Can't wait.
I'm marrying 2 before Yellow Pine. I'm marrying anything that isn't stamped Doug fir, Hemfir, or spruce. That's cheaper than those things and has a number 2 stamp or a standard better stamp on it. So that would be either Yellow Pine or Western Woods or Northern Species or Ponderosa Pine. Like those are your cottonwood species, right? Those are the ones that you turn to when times are tough. I like that stuff. I want to own it. Want to own it all. And then the stuff that I'm married to would be, I'm married to the idea that 2x4 and 2x6, the relationship between those two things needs to change. And so it's kind of a heaven and hell. Like everybody wants 2x6 now. My customers are still short 2x6 in terms of their inventory positions on the Western species. And yet as a seller, I would rather sell them 2 before at minus 100, 120. You look at the spread between 2 before and 2x6 Hemfir and spruce right now, it's substantial. And so I would be married to the idea or dating the idea that 2x4 needs to go up a little bit more and 2x6 needs to top out and come down at some point. I definitely think that trade would work going over the next 90 days. I'm not going to marry it, but I'm dating it. And then dumping, really, if I had a bunch of 2x6 16s laying around, 2x6 18s and 20s, I wouldn't dump them, but I mean, I'd make sure that the other guy owned them at these prices. There's an old saying, hey, when the price starts with a 6 or a 7, let the other guy own it. That would be my theory on all this really expensive prime lengths in 2x6 and wider right now. So yeah, I want to marry what Charles wants to dump, and then I want to date the 2 before 2x6 spread, and I actually want to dump high price 2x6 Western species prime length. So there you go.
I'm going to marry 2x4, 104 and 5/8. I think I was just dating that before. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back
Now
and
you're
listen.
really married.
Simply just, I think that one thing I'm seeing a lot of the bigger retail yards wanting me to ship job sites now in 104 and 5/8 instead of to yards, which puts my tentacles up a little bit. And also, I still think there's a fairly good short trade on the multifamily side that needs to buy that. And so I think that's going to continue that strength in 2x4, 104 and 5/8. Dating wise, 2x4 16s I like, 2x6 104 and 5/8 I still like, because man, the takeout on those has been crazy. We can't keep those in stock enough. We just keep selling them and raising price. I'd also like to start looking at 2x4 number 2 Southern Yellow Pine and start figuring out where I want to build a base on 10 15 cars of that up in the Midwest somewhere. Probably not there yet, but I think we're starting to get in the point where you got to start picking your numbers. Dump, Matt, I'm going to go what you always say. What I want to dump right now, because is anything that I have that's a dog or a cat that's been sitting around that I shouldn't own because I don't know anything about it, but I bought it anyway. And items that I know when markets roll over, I sit with them all the time. I want to move those off, and I want to move them to people that want just cheap fiber and get them out of there. But I don't have any specific items I want to dump. And as far as Charles was talking about 2x6. If anybody wants to buy 2x4, 2x6 Euro 16s for mid-Jan, I'll give you a Western specified print plus adder coming into the port that you can do with those going in if you want to lock into some fiber. I'm not going to firm price it, but I'll give you a formula. So,
oh man, come on, Ash. Come on, separate the men from the boys. Let's go.
I don't want to give away all my secrets, but yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I think we're going to stay strong at least through it. But that's kind of what I have. anything else you boys have until we sign off here? I'm ready to get out of here and jump in the truck and start heading toward Iowa.
Yeah, I want to wish you really good
Chuck,
luck.
Are you taking
pheasant,
your Honda?
The Ridge Line.
Yeah, so
That's the
Charles
Taliban truck.
Charles doesn't call it a truck.
It's not a truck. It's a minivan with a bed.
He says it's a minivan with a bed in it. And that is true. And my buddies will say the same thing when I pull up. But it's a paid-for minivan with a bed in the back of it.
That's fine. Hey, I mean,
I wish you good luck on the birds, and I wish Charles good luck on the feral swine down there in South Carolina.
It's getting cold enough now. It's gonna be fun.
One person I wanted to give a shout out to. He calls me and listens to us all the time. Justin Smith from Tampa International. He always loves listening to the podcast. Loves hearing you, Charles, and you, Matt, and good dude all around. I worked with him for a long time, and he's probably going to be listening on the treadmill while we talk to him while we're saying his name. So, Justin, thanks for.
Hey, Matt. He only said he liked us because we're the ones here. If it was just him and Greg, he wouldn't say a thing about us.
I know Justin. He's a good dude. So yeah, that's a nice compliment.
He is a good dude. Jam up.
Yep, no doubt. All right, boys, I appreciate it. Everybody have a good rest of the week, and we'll thanks for making the time to do this today.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. The Lumber Word podcast is dedicated to engaging conversations about the lumber industry, including trading ideas, market trends, and evaluations of overvalued and undervalued assets. We wish to emphasize that the discussions and opinions expressed in this podcast are purely for informational and entertainment purposes. They should not be considered as financial or investment advice. We encourage our listeners to make their own financial decisions, taking into account their unique circumstances and financial goals, and to seek professional financial advice if necessary.